r/credit. What BS are you dealing with at work right now? I ran out of work to do at my job over the last couple of weeks. That doesn't sound like a bad thing for most, but my at won't drive me crazy if I'm occupied. To explain how this came about, I do software CAD for a suite of products primarily for healthcare provider credentialing. We are the maintenance team, but we don't really run our ship like an agile team normally does. When our team was established, back in August, there was over 400 cases already in our backlog. So from the start we have been focused on working through all of the most critical cases, while more would come in. Typically I always have some work that I could find to do to always stay busy. This is extremely important to me, because once I start getting bored with my job I need to start finding another, because I'll grow to hate it. Fast forward to now, and we are actually catching up. Over the last 3 weeks 4 out of our 5 developers on my team took vacation. That's not a problem at all. Everyone deserves time off. So I finished all of my currently assigned cases and started on our backlog of cases. That worked for a week when I learned that I have completed all that I possibly can for my role on all of our remaining cases. I started working on a digital training binder to help the next person who comes on for CAD on our team. I'm the first person in this role, and management didn't exactly have a list of responsibilities set for me. I've stretched the time a little with this to make it as useful as possible. Immediately after completing the binder my boss just so happened to be walking by and gave me some good feedback. Afterwards I let him know that I'm literally out of things to work on and that I've never had that problem here before. Instead of giving me some busy work, he granted me access to start working the dev side of some of the cases. This is pretty awesome for me, because my current dream is to make the jump to the dev side once we have a spot available. TLDR, I got bored at work because I ran out of work, and my boss hooked me up by letting me get the experience to help my next promotion. If you're in management and are wondering how you can get loyal employees, focus on your employees' well-being and professional growth with the same importance as the company's profit and they'll never want to leave. TLDR, my coworker is an ego-driven man-child who treats our subordinates like they're filthy animals with no self-thought. I'm in a military leadership position. We have students for 6 months that we train and groom for both job proficiency and qualities of a good leader. We instructors get randomly picked on a rotation to train the next class as they come in. I have been in 15 plus years now with ample amounts of experience both as a subordinate and a supervisor. I have had what I consider some of the world's worst leaders as well as a few I believe could lead this nation successfully if given the chance. I have had my own share of bad decisions, judgments calls, assumptions, and ideas that I had to slowly learn and adjust over time. I take pride in this job and I strive very hard to impart any amount of wisdom I can to these young minds while I have them for 6 months. I set boundaries and deal with the problems when they come up, but more importantly, I strive to gain their respect first, and in turn they gain mine. My co-instructor, however, is a hot-headed punk who wants so badly to beat everyone into shape and scare these kids in to being good leaders to a level that constantly has him ruining our chances to address and mold out negative and unwanted behaviors. His response to everything is fire and brimstone, to just shut everything down instead of giving them the chance to fail. Part of making a good leader is having chances and experiences to learn from. Being told because I said so only teaches you to ask someone else or act first and ask for forgiveness later. Instead you challenge them to improve the process, do the legwork, make them investigate in their own what it would take to do it their way. Make them completely plan out the logistics. And then if it seems even remotely feasible, provided no risk, if harm to self or others, let them try it. Hell, better yet, let them lead it. If they fail, they will learn a valuable lesson. If they succeed, you will learn a valuable lesson. But this guy is just here to crush souls and tear everyone down as per the old military school of thought. I can tell you firsthand there's a time and place for that, sure, but it should never be your only tool in your tool bag. He frustrates me to no end, but has also provided me a new set of challenges. My goal is to hopefully help make some positive change for him before the 6 months is up. Or at the very least I'll learn more moving forward. Sorry for the wall. Just ranting, I guess. I've been running our group for 5+ years while my boss jerks off. Everybody knows it. My peers all have looked to me for leadership and mentorship, and I run a peer group for all level of folks to tackle various projects etc. and help company leadership implement directives. Well, there was just a reorg. Most of my peers went up a level compared to me, and my jerk-off slacker boss is now their peer. I'm basically circled out of my people now, with my boss being the one in the room for project and team leadership discussions with the people I normally work with. There was no explanation given at all. They just told everyone this is what's happening, so suck a lemon. Some others got fucked too, but I'm the only one at my level who did, and I can make a strong case I'm one of the best among my peers at what we do. People tell me that regularly. I've been at the company 13 years and can objectively demonstrate I'm close to a unicorn, and in addition I always get along with everyone. I'm known for my steady approaches. I swear I'm not arrogant, I just know that of the stuff within my umbrella. I know my shit and I know how to collaborate. Best I can tell, my boss was too much of a jerk off to get promoted himself, so our whole team basically moved down/sideways, making him a peer of my former peers and leaving me circled out. My peers are pissed about that, by the way, and have said so. They don't want to work with my boss at all. The catch is my boss's wife has been fighting cancer for several months and is probably terminal, so presumably I'm getting the shaft because they don't want to fire him and leave him without insurance, but they know damn well he can't handle more responsibility since he doesn't even run the team he's supposed to run. So this ended up being the solution they came up with, probably banking on my steady approaches and low-key demeanor to mean I won't freak out and leave. It's been almost 2 weeks, and after thinking long and hard, I'm probably gonna freak out and leave. I won't be able to find a job as good, but this is bullshit and I feel I need to stand up on principle. I'm being taken advantage of. I refuse to not only run our group on my boss's behalf while he brags and takes the credit, but also to now be circled out of the group of folks I normally work with to do some really good work. That was the one thing I had. I just can't swallow my pride on this. It's just wrong, and the more I think about it the angrier I get. And I'm usually really chill. Ugh. Feels good to write it all out at least. Wish me luck. I'll probably be joining the death at job hunters in this shit job market where protections for labor have been eroding for 40 years. At least we are in a decent place financially. Edit. Cleaned up some stuff that wasn't clear. My company is currently bending over backwards at every whim of our largest customer, to the point that everything about the way we've operated for the past 25 years is changing on a weekly basis, just because the customer wants more or something different. When I have a problem, none of the specialists I'm supposed to escalate my problems to answer the phone or emails. I assume because they are constantly tied up in meetings and working 70-hour weeks for the last 6 months. Equipment arrives missing parts, new software isn't developed, machines go through a major revision every 3 months, procedures aren't being updated. I'm paid for the job of a standard technician. My title on my business card is a shift supervisor. I do the actual work of a team lead, my supervisor's position, while he does the work of a local manager that we didn't have for 5 years until 3 weeks ago, who we now have to train. I work a 60 hours a week shift, average another 4 to 5 hours each week over that, answer my phone nearly every night until 9 PM, used to answer until midnight, to answer questions for my night shift employees. I frequently work through breaks and occasionally lunch on a 12-hour shift, don't forget, because I find that it's the only time I can get 5 minutes to do anything without being interrupted. Just kidding, I still get interrupted. I have nearly 800 unread emails that I have been trying to catch up on, but they come faster than I can read and respond. My company exclusively brings in new people via contract employers at low pay and minimal benefits because it's easy to fire them when they don't perform well, which is all the time because there's no formal training program and we work on high-tech semiconductor manufacturing equipment. My boss fires people left and right, including both of our secretaries/admins, and now I and my partner in crime are expected to pick up all of that slack. When someone used to put in their 2-week notice, he would just tell them not to come back then and there. Then they would tell me, and I would pass the word officially to him. He asks me if they are worth keeping. I always tell him yes. Sometimes they have been allowed to finish their 2 weeks. Now they just don't put notice and quit showing up. Mostly they just tell me a few days early and I just don't say anything because I care about my employees more than that. I do all of this for less than the average household income in my, admittedly above average, area. Because of the hours I have to work, I don't have time to do the schooling I need to finally complete my degree and get a better job. And TK, if you're reading this, you'll know my Reddit now. Edit. I've got more. In a team of 40 people, we've gone through 25 people in 6 months. Healthy mix of fired and quit. I've approved of the firing of 3 of those, all for safety violations. My boss failed to properly report an injury that resulted in multiple lost days and I have no idea why. I reported this information to our EHS department and nothing. For some reason I thought my contract was up end of August. It isn't. It's up at the beginning of August. I talked to management and it was a total surprise to them, and now they are scrambling to possibly get me a salaried position like they promised, but also saying IDK, the budget might not let us. So I don't know if I'll have a job by the end of the month or if they'll manage to create something before I leave. Either way, I'm looking for jobs. Edit. Here are more details for all who are curious. Thanks for all the sympathy. It sucks not having job security. I'm an editor/communications specialist for an online college. They hired me on as an intern last summer, talking about how they were going to offer me a full-time job when I graduated. By the end of my internship, they said they would look into getting me a part-time temporary position. I, needing money and figuring it was a good resume builder, stayed there during my final semester, working once a week as a student worker. Got a call late November/early December about how the lead editor, my supervisor, was stepping down to part-time and they needed someone to fill the gap. Since I applied to 35+ jobs and none panned out, I took it and got a significant raise from my previous wage. I argued with them for a while about why I couldn't get hired, and they gave me some BS about how they don't have time to hire people right now, while I wondered why they couldn't have just set the contract for 3 months and gotten going in the meantime, because the need wasn't going away. Now, we got to the point that I outlined in my post. I'm out of work by the end of the month, but they're holding me over a barrel and it's frustrating. I don't even know if I should look for another job at this point, but they are well aware that they are on thin ice with me. My experience with them has been bait and switch the whole time I've been with them. I'll probably take it, assuming they offer it, because everything I find online is more work for less money. Plus, this is a state job, which is cushy for someone my age, 22. What I'm making now is really decent for an English major, and for some reason the publishing industry thinks they can abuse graduates via unpaid internships instead of paying them a decent wage. So I'm not as interested in getting involved with it as I used to be, especially now that I'm making money. I just wish I got paid like everyone else for having 4th of July off after dragging our editing backlog out of the weeds. Hopefully it pans out. I've been staying with my parents because I didn't want to get locked in a lease without knowing I have a job here, so I have a ton of money saved up in case it doesn't. By the end of this month, I should know something. Terra for the educational/corporate systems bureaucracy. I can't go into a lot of specifics, but to try use broad strokes. The way my team's work was set up at the inception was done very poorly, both because the client company defined poor reporting metrics and my employer has absolutely no experience doing this kind of work. It's seriously kind of a mystery how we ended up doing as much work and the kind of work we do for this client in a very internationally competitive environment between providers. To give you an idea of why our required reporting metrics are bad, they're all basically 4 different versions of us saying what we are doing for our job. We fully have the ability to lie about this, and there is no one checking. This is very bad, because this is the sort of job where things fall between those cracks and cause real problems. The worst parts of my job are because of things that fell in these cracks, because of former coworkers. Over the past 8 months or so, literally every person above me on my team from my direct escalation, help all the way through site leadership and ours has turned over. One of my bosses is now our direct report working for the client, which is the closest thing to continuity our team has had in this regard. My worst account is because of a company that skirts somewhere between full-on incompetence and breaking the law. We've told them what we need from them to fix the situation repeatedly over the course of the year. Many controlled temper phone calls resulting in absolutely no change. We brought in the team that has a heavier role in that account relationship only to find that the client's representative to that company has only worked for them for 2 months. His solution to the problem was to have conference calls with them to resolve the issue. Leadership and the client have finally come around to the metrics and a complete lack of insight into our work being a probable cause of the problems this space has. Unfortunately, this results in an incredible amount of micromanagement requests from the client. And because my workload is dealing with high impact accounts or high profile companies in either countries with strict laws for our work or the US, a lot of this heat gets directed at me. I have passed on applying for a lot of advancement because I have been planning on moving with someone for the past year. I spent a lot of time, energy, and money to help someone very close to me out of a bad situation. We got 90% of the way there, but neither of us could find jobs in the city to which she wanted to move. So she backed out, and I'm stuck in this job I absolutely hate. I handle multiple millions of dollars a month. I make $17.50 an hour with a health insurance deductible that represents about 20% of my gross earnings out of pocket. I can't take this job anymore, but I'm having a very hard time finding a replacement because my resume is not great. Oh neat. Here is a detailed recount of the latest bullshit at my job. It's long, but there is a TL doctor at the end. Setting: 2:40 AM Sunday the 7th of July 19, working as access control at a desk in the hospital that rarely sees more than 2 people use it after midnight. Located on the opposite side of the hospital from the emergency room, most hospital staff, and every other public safety officer. There is a panic button available to call the public safety office, a red medical emergency button, which is labeled as being specifically for pregnant women related emergencies, and a phone for me to use. I'm not allowed to leave the desk. They want somebody there at all times. Situation: 2:40 AM. A very obese man, large man, LM, henceforth, walks into the building and tells me that he is thinking about killing himself and would like to speak to somebody. I tell him I will get somebody for him and direct him to take a seat as he isn't looking too great. I immediately pick up the phone and call the public safety office directly. A cowwalker, henceforth known as Ob, answers the phone and I say a man just walked in and said he is thinking about killing himself and would like to speak to somebody. Is this a red button event, or can you get somebody to come over here for him? He tells me not to hit the red button and that he would call doctor somebody to see if they can come over. 2:45 AM Ob calls back and says that doctor somebody says to tell LM to go to the emergency room on the opposite corner of the hospital. At this point I'm making small talk with LM and texting relevant information to a triage nurse that I know. LM appears very sleepy. He can barely speak, almost as though intoxicated, but doesn't appear drunk, and he frequently falls asleep while sitting upright. He is so large and his head sinks so far into his chest that I'm concerned about the possibility of body weight asphyxiation. Given the other symptoms, I'm also concerned that he may have already ingested a bunch of pills as a suicide attempt. I don't feel comfortable giving him directions to the which involves walking back outside and halfway around a literal city block to get there. I explain to LM that they want him to go to the and that I can't stop him from leaving, but I don't feel comfortable with him leaving and walking over there. LM says he agrees and that he doesn't even know where he is or how to get to the 2:50 AM I again call Ob and say, roughly, neither me nor LM feel comfortable with LM leaving right now. I'm happy to get him in a wheelchair and take him to the myself, but if that isn't okay then we need to get somebody else to do it. Ob tells me to hold on while transfers me to the officer in charge, henceforth Ok. Upon connecting with Ok, I tell him what I just told Ob. Ok says I cannot leave the desk to wheel him over to and that he will come over for him when he can. I ask what I should do if LM starts to leave, to which Ok says, roughly, that LM is not currently a patient and thus it is not our problem if he leaves and dies. I, knowing that I'm not going to get anywhere useful talking to Ok, simply say okay and that ends the conversation. I continue observing and speaking with LM and tell him we'll get him to the air one way or another. 3 AM I call op and say look, either I'm going to take LM to the air or I'm going to call 911. He says he can't authorize me leaving my post and I say I understand that. He again transfers me to OC and I say again look, either I'm going to take LM to the air or I'm going to call 911. He replies, roughly, first off 911 wouldn't go over there anyway, you wanna fucking bet, and second you cannot leave that desk. So keep your pants on tight, and I'll be over there as soon as I can. Then hangs up. 3:10 AM 30 minutes have now gone by since LM came in, and I contacted public safety. Nobody has come to help. I decide to get the man in a wheelchair and I spend a whopping 3 to 4 minutes wheeling him to the other side of the hospital and walking my ass back. 3:15 AM OC walks in the door and asks where LM is. I tell him I wheeled him over to the air. He starts yelling at me saying how he said to not do that and how he said he would be here soon. I said that wasn't good enough and reiterated that LM was here for a half hour. OC says what if you weren't here and somebody comes in with a gun and starts shooting the place up? To which I responded what if I am here and somebody comes in with a gun and starts shooting the place up? He didn't really have anything to say to that as both situations are effectively the same. OC tells me to go home, so I say okay and start packing my stuff up. As I'm packing up he walks back and basically says if I agree to follow his orders then I can stay the rest of my shift. This is preferable to me because then I can get paid to apply for new jobs, so I lie through my teeth and agree. Of note, I maintained calm this entire time, even when being yelled at. I just kind of stared at him and thought you absolute moron. TL. Doctor, alone on my half of a large hospital. Man walks in saying he is thinking about killing himself and wants to see somebody. Man can barely speak, can't stay awake, and is worsening as time goes by. I spend a half hour playing phone tag with public safety to try and get somebody over here to get this man to the air. After a half hour of trying I say fuck it and decide to disobey my supervisor's orders and take this man over to the air myself, leaving my post for 3 to 4 minutes in the process. Supervisor comes in 5 minutes later and yells at me for leaving my post and tells me to go home. I say okay, pack up, and then he decides I can stay if I agree to follow his orders. I work in cybersecurity as a software engineer. The product I work on deals with network traffic. The product was built by a small company and it was frankly written like shit because they only hired fresh grads and coops from the local university. When the Fortune 500 company I work for bought out the company and tried to integrate the product, all hell broke loose. There were sections of code that were not documented and were incredibly obscure using proprietary libraries whose code are left long ago. It took me literal months to remove one of them. For anyone who has coded this might seem not too out of the ordinary, but for those who work with enterprise grade code it's unacceptable. But that's not the shit I'm dealing with right now. What I'm dealing with right now is that, after cleaning the code into a workable state, the company a few years ago moved to Agile. Whatever, I've worked with Agile before. It's not my favorite, but I can work with it. 3 other engineers and I were sent to another site for another division who uses Agile to help us better integrate Agile. When the shift came, I got back and the 4 of us made our recommendations to the CTO and senior architects. I took 2-month leave to deal with health issues, and when I came back we were using Agile. Sorta. It was the biggest SMRGSBORD of development approaches. We operate about 65% of the time in what I would call typical Agile. They decided against implementing a direct copy of any other Agile implementations and borrowed parts from different ones to suit us. We had scrums and gates, but no co-location as we work across 3 sites, and in the end I think we have a cross between XP, FDD and ASD. The problem comes with quality. In Agile ideally you're testing and building simultaneously and then hit your release. In Waterfall you build and test separately. Well, we had so many bugs we reintroduced a control committee, borrowed from our previous Waterfall model and modified, who has to approve every single push because teams would race to have their updates in without regression testing or anything, and we've now ended up with a 6-month backlog of bugs that are listed as critical, but the teams refuse to fix because it doesn't break their part of the software. We missed 2 whole releases because legal wouldn't let us update. 3 days ago I get an invite to a meeting from the CTO with my manager and I feel like I'm about to be made a scapegoat, but no, he wants to send me to another site in another country to learn Clean Room. Now you might be thinking to yourself, people still use Clean Room? Not people, but 4 guys working on some obscure internal proprietary software. I wish I had family so I could decline. I can't get over how fucking dumb this guy is. Our hell-sent concoction of development approaches hasn't worked. Let's throw in another, just for the hell of it. Fuck Agile. Long story, but I'll get to the point and answer the question eventually. So I work at a printers in the UK. 2 years ago my lazy ass bosses, whose work mentality consists of throwing money at something and hoping it works whilst they get to do jack shit every day, decided to branch out and buy an ice hockey team called Milton Keynes Lightning. Why? I honestly have no idea. They've always fancied themselves as entrepreneurs. The team had just been promoted to the Elite League when they purchased them, the highest league of ice hockey in the UK, something that took them 15 odd years to accomplish, so all the hard work was already done and everything was more or less set to roll. Anyways, my bosses never really had enough money to properly buy it and had done so via extraordinary bank loans. To cut a long story short, over the course of 2 years they ran this whole team and organization right into the fucking ground. Not only did they achieve terrible results on the ice, but one by one there were dozens of stories of players not being paid, staff members walking out, ex-coaches not being paid, and rumors left, right and center of financial misconduct and shady dealings. Anyways, it got so bad that my bosses attempted to pull the plug and walk away from it, whereupon they were told they couldn't as they had a year left on the contract. So to make it more affordable to themselves, they dropped the team to a newly formed semi-pro league, which not only pissed off the fans, but it led to all of the sponsors pulling out and the EIHL refusing to grant them a license to play ice hockey. They basically more or less destroyed the team overnight, and people left, right and center wanted their blood and were of course demanding long overdue money. Now on to why this affects me. My bosses had the bright idea of registering our work building as the main head office of MK Lightning, which meant the entire time I've had to do my own job, I've also had to sometimes answer calls for them regarding the team too, even though we are an hour's drive away from them and in a completely different county. This of course meant that every single bailiff, enforcer and debt collector came straight after us. For the last 4 months I have been dealing with so many bailiffs coming to our work and threatening to close us down and take our equipment etc away that I've literally lost count. If I were to hazard a guess, I must have met and talked to at least 20 personally, and that doesn't include people who phone us, one of which is an ex-coach of the team. I've never heard an angry Canadian before, but that's now something I can tick off my list. So in a nutshell, I'm basically fighting off enforcers and bailiffs on a near weekly basis because my boss is royally fucked up with a sports team, and I'm spending almost every day wondering if I'll still have a job by the end of the month. They no longer have the team, and thankfully an organization managed to step in and rescue it, but there are still a lot of people suffering from what they did. I've barely scratched the surface with this, so if anyone wants to know more, feel free to ask me, or just Google Milton Keynes Lightning Graham and Monica Moody, or look up the team on Wikipedia to get a tiny glimpse of the picture. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe the channel.